Hi there. Welcome to the new weekly Ozone radio show coming to you from sunny Bermuda. The show features items of general interest, including health, finances, lifestyle, with a dash of common sense and humor. Your hosts are Robin Trimmingham and Bill Story of the Olderhood Group. We hope you enjoy the show. So let's do this.
Welcome to the Ozone Weekly Radio Show, coming to you from sunny Bermuda. I'm Robin.
Hi, and I'm Bill.
And today we're chatting about, I shouldn't say ghosts of Christmas past, but maybe memories of Christmas past.
Well, let's just call it Tales of Christmas Past, because that covers a multitude of things. I can remember back many years ago, actually many decades ago would be more appropriate.
Before or after the invention of electricity?
Well, it's funny you should ask that question because broadly speaking, it's after the invention of electricity. But I'm going to share with you one little tale from my childhood, which may open that point up to debate, shall we say.
Okay.
I remember back, as a kid, Christmas was a big thing. The weather was usually pretty bad. Sometimes we had snow. As you can tell by my accent, I was born and brought up in Scotland, central Scotland, actually, about 20 miles north.
Really? You're from Scotland?
Whatever.
Yes.
It's tough to tell. I agree. We were about 20 miles north of Glasgow, out basically in the country. And we never really saw Santa Claus that much. If you were in the big city, in the stores, there would always be a Santa Claus around there someplace. But out in the country, we never saw the guy. But it was funny, though, because I do remember back to that we didn't, I was an only child, so I didn't have to compete with brothers and sisters. I think you had, or still have, obviously, brothers and sisters, Robin, right?
I've got one of each, yes.
Yeah. So I never had to compete. So, as long as the present was underneath the Christmas tree with my name on it, then it was mine. I didn't have to challenge anybody or pull it away from anybody. So, but the thing was that, we didn't have a lot of money. And, we just didn't get, or I just didn't get enough presents compared to what you get nowadays, sort of thing. So, but I would always get a big present, as I would call it, and I'll talk about that in a second. But then I would get the Guinness Book of World Records. Every year, my mom and dad gave me the Guinness Book of World Records. I think they wanted to educate me, I guess, I don't know. But it was fantastic. I loved the book. And then I would also get a selection box, which was like a Cadbury chocolate box of things, which was typically finished by, the end of the day. Made you feel sick, of course, whatever. But the other thing I would get was a pair of socks. Every year I would get a pair of socks. And they were pretty much the same colour. I'm convinced that my mum bought maybe a dozen pairs of socks one year and then just, dished them out one at a time over the next, several years. It was amazing. But the one big thing I did get one time, and it's probably the only thing I can remember, was a record player. Which played, LPs, as we used to call it, back in the olden days, long playing records. My first long playing record that I played on my brand new record player then, I would maybe be, 8, maybe 9, 10, something like that, was Roy Orbison. Pretty Woman.
Well, imagine that. As you might imagine, Bill and I are not the same age. So about the same time that he's getting the record player, I was getting my first Kenner Easy Bake Oven. This is not sponsored, by the way. And for those of you who don't know, the Kenner Easy Bake Oven was a big plastic box with a very high-powered light bulb that went inside of it. And the idea was that you mixed up an itty bitty cake mix, and there were cake mixes in the box, and you mix them up with water. You put it in a little pan, you put it into the plastic box, and lo and behold, the super high-powered light bulb baked the cake. And out the other end came something that looked, felt, and according to my father, tasted very much like a hockey puck. But it was the greatest present ever, to the point that my younger sister, who was given something equally impressive, looked across the room, saw me unwrapping this thing, and said to herself, that's one thing she's going to have to share. You know, it's amazing what happens with brothers and sisters over the holidays.
I get the feeling that your sister will have something to say about that when she listens to, to this recording. You never know.
Let's hope for all our sakes that never happened. She's pretty good.
Now, one of the things, probably one of my favorite stories from my childhood and Christmas was there was in Scotland, well, in the UK, international rugby is a big thing, and my dad was very much into rugby, played it as a young man, and he would take my mum and I to international rugby matches in Edinburgh. Scotland was playing, England or Ireland or France or whatever. And I remember one time we were there at this game, and I think it was Scotland, England, can't remember. Anyway, we went along to this game, and this is huge. I mean, this international rugby, 50,000 people, big thing around the world. Anyway, I thoroughly enjoyed it. And so when I got home that night, I decided to write about it, my experience of it was my first game.
Oh, excellent.
But I decided to write about it. So I had written something up, and there used to be a comic, I think they used to call it, a magazine kind of a thing for kids. I think this was called the Hotspur, if I remember correctly, way back. And you could submit your article to see if they would publish it. And so I thought, well, why not? So I sent it off, I published it. And as it turns out, it was published, but I must have missed that week because I never actually got the edition of the week that it was published. So I didn't really realize it was published, but it was. Anyway, that's combined with another thing about Christmas. The two stories have come together. There was a thing called the Parcel Bus. And the Parcel Bus was a bus that came around the streets with parcels in it. In other words, the postman could never carry all the parcels that were being delivered. So they put them all in a bus, and they would drive up the street. And whenever they got to a house where there was to be a parcel delivered, somebody would jump out, hand it over, jump back in, and the bus would move on. And this excited me no end. I loved watching this Parcel Bus coming up the street, particularly if it was cold and wet or snowy. It was beautiful. And so every day I would sit at the front window to look to see if the Parcel Bus was going to stop at my door, and it never did, and it never did, and it never did, until one day, guess what? It stopped. Oh, wow. And somebody came up a pathway and, bing, 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 bing on the doorbell and handed in this, what turned out to be a fairly longish parcel, okay? Quite heavy, but longish. Couldn't understand what it was, because when you'd submitted your article to the Hotspur, you were asked to tick a box of what would you like as a gift if it is published. And I had ticked a soccer ball. Fine, but as I say, I didn't realize that the thing was, had been published. I just didn't know. So I was confused as to what was this particular, present, this gift. Anyway, rapidly I tore the stuff off, got into this thing, and it turned out to be a cricket bat. I thought, wait a minute. A, it was published, which I didn't know, and B, I asked for a soccer ball. Why am I getting a cricket bat? Well, I got to tell you, this cricket bat was, whoa. I mean, this was a magnificent. This was a professional cricket bat, and I used it. Played a little bit of cricket when I was a kid, but that was my gift. So that was my first attempt at writing. And I got published on the first attempt. So there you go.
Well, apparently that was a very encouraging cricket bat then. It's funny what children think when they're very, very small. I grew up in Canada, if you can't tell by the accent. And, of course, we always had lots of snow when I was a small child. And I don't know how big a thing Santa Claus was in Scotland when you were growing up, but when I was growing up in Canada, Santa Claus was everywhere. There was a huge Santa Claus parade. Santa Claus was in all of the department stores. And of course, I was encouraged to believe in Santa Claus. And I mean, a guy who brings presents in the middle of the night, who wouldn't want to believe in that? But I was a very big thinker, even as a tiny little kid. And I remember very early on hearing this business about Santa Claus landing on the roof and reindeer and coming down a chimney. And this concerned me a great deal because, unlike a lot of houses in our neighborhood, we did have a chimney and a fireplace in the living room. And I'd been and inspected that chimney very carefully. And I'd looked up the flue and seen that there was a space that was only about 6 inches wide. And I thought about that, and I looked at the size of my father, who was a grown man, and in my little brain, I reasoned, there's absolutely no way a full-size grown man is fitting down this space. But I was quite confident that this Santa Claus thing was real. And so I worked it out for myself that, of course, Santa Claus couldn't possibly be landing on the roof with all his reindeer in a sleigh. He'd be landing on the front lawn, and coming through the front door like a normal person. So every morning for several years, on Christmas morning, I'd get up really early. I'd rush to every window in every bedroom on the second floor, looking out at the snow below and trying to inspect the snow to look for hoof prints in the snow from the reindeer having landed on the front lawn.
Nice one. It's funny you should say that, because that reminds me of, as I say, we didn't have many Santas around our small town. They were all like in the big city. So my mum and dad had got this figured out. So here's what they did. This goes back to your point a few minutes ago, talking about before electricity. We had a coal fire in the living room. So you had to start the fire every day, particularly in the winter, obviously, when it was cold, bring in the coal. And I mean, it was so messy, so dirty, but you had to do it, otherwise you'd freeze. Anyway, so you set the fire up and off it would go. So, but of course, up inside the chimney, it was all black soot and it was really messy. So what my mum and dad did was, on Christmas Eve, the night before, they would encourage me to get to bed soon because Santa will be coming. And I'll go, oh yeah, maybe. No, he will. Go to bed. It's off. I would go to bed. Well, of course, then the next morning you get up, nice and early, and you run downstairs and see if indeed Santa had come. And sure enough, there's presents right underneath the Christmas tree. And I thought, oh wow, he did come. He did. But here's what they also did. They used to take a piece of paper and crazy. They would put their fingers up inside the chimney and get the black soot from the chimney. And they would write on this piece of paper, Merry Christmas, Billy. That's what they called me when I was a kid, Billy. This was written, Merry Christmas, Billy, love Santa, in black suit. That was it. That was it. That was the whole reason for Christmas, was I would get a personal note. I have to add that. Personal for me, from Santa to Billy. I loved it. I still remember that.
Well, I think it's just wonderful that the holiday season, doesn't matter where you live, what your traditions are, what you believe, it's the opportunity to create heartwarming memories that stay with you throughout your life. And I think that's something that everybody can agree on. So Bill and I would like to wish everybody watching and everybody listening a wonderful holiday season and all of the best for the new year to come.
Ho, ho, ho.
Happy holidays.